Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of DEO Growth Secrets. I'm your fearless host, Emmett Scott, and today we have Dr. Samson Liu on our podcast. We're so excited to have him, along with a lot of our live audience here with DEO. For those who are DEO members, just so you know what's coming up, tomorrow we have, as regular, our open operations office hours for any COOs, VPs of ops, operations managers, office managers. They can jump on there, talk to our fractional COOs. We've got our periodontist virtual meetup on Friday. And then next month, we will have our next training on this Wednesday evening. If you haven't registered yet as a member for our DEO Summit 2025, it is June 12th through the 14th. So make sure you've registered for that. It's going to be down in Phoenix, Arizona, and it's going to be awesome. We're going to really break down a lot of around the profitability with team. We've got what's called the staffing blueprint we're going to be rolling out, unlocking profit at every revenue tier, the labor code, cracking the org chart for profit and precision, pay bands and pathways, how to scale dental positions with clarity, and much more. We've got some pre-event workshops to the dental group exit strategies, which is going to be awesome. It's a playbook to get really peak valuation. And then we're going to have another one called the AI Edge in Dentistry. So how do you innovate, secure, and succeed in that? So if you are not a member of DEO, feel free to go to the dental organization or dental entrepreneur organization website at deodentalgroup.com, and you can register for an accelerator growth call there. So with that, Dr. Samson Liu, great to be with you this evening. I appreciate you being on. Let me give a little bit of your background. You're the founder of SOHDental, a national dental support organization that's purpose-driven, people-first focused, and legacy-minded. His lifelong passion is to build long-term collaborative relationships with doctors and unlock practice potential. He's a frequent speaker with an excellent industry reputation and relationships with key opinion leaders, and just a good guy, I have to say. He's just a good guy.
Oh, thank you.
And smart, man. So that's why we had you on, is mostly for the smart part. So it'd probably be helpful for those who haven't met you just to tell a little bit about your history, because you have a really cool career that not a lot of us have experienced. I mean, really from the ground floor of the DSO world now onto your own DSO. So you want to talk just quickly about that?
Sure. I spent 18 years with Heartland Dental. When I left Heartland, I was the chief clinical officer or executive vice president. And so I learned a lot on how a DSO made mistakes early on and corrected them over time. Because back in the day, there was no blueprint, like there's no DEO. I wish there was DEO when Heartland Dental was around, right? So, but because of that, they made almost every mistakes possible back in the day. And so I think that experience really enabled me when I left Heartland in 2018 to start my company to avoid some major pitfalls. So I really appreciate my experience there and really helped pivot it. When I'm actually running my own company, then all of a sudden, like, oh my God, we didn't do this, we did this, that didn't work. And so it's just a lot of, just lucky experience that I didn't even know was applicable until I was going through it myself and going through the same growing pains. Like, oh, so that's why they did this, that's why they didn't do that. And now I understood. So I was learning as I was working there without knowing it was going to help me with my own company. So the fast forward now, 6 years into it, almost 7 years into it. So we're about 40 locations in about 11 states, and we're pretty far coast to coast. And we're just talking to Emmett about Hawaii because we have a substantial presence in Hawaii. And so when we say we're national, we're truly national. And some of the biggest questions always ask how you manage practices so far away, but that may be another podcast.
Yeah, no, I mean, I love how you started that with the mindset piece, because I think too many times as entrepreneurs, we think it means we have all the answers. And in fact, before we started, you even said, hey, just so you know, I don't have all the answers. But, I often say getting married teaches you how to be married. Having kids teaches you how to be a parent. And owning a business teaches you how to run a business, right? And so
So true.
on the job training, it's a little bit like Groundhog Day. You get to wake up every day and try again to see if you can get just a little bit farther. And,
It's true.
so I think having that long-term mindset's critical. You had a pretty specific role too at Heartland. I mean, you were not only the chief clinical officer, but you were doing quite a bit on the turnaround piece. I mean, if you're good, they tend to put you in the worst places, don't they? Isn't that kind of
Yeah,
what we do too with our best people,
yeah.
right?
I was kind of the you know, I hate to use the word doctor whisperer, but that's what they kind of call me. So then, I get stuck with the worst practices possible. And most of the time is about, building trust with the doctors and how to help them see what they don't see. And
Mm.
that's basically my role. And I do a lot of on-site visits to my offices, especially the ones in Hawaii. I have to really go there quite
Right,
often.
right. How kind of you. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a lot of it's about the art of how to point out the things that doctors don't see in the practices. And to my surprise, most people are much smarter than you think. If you help them see what they're missing, and guess what, they'll start working on it and improve it. And so I think
Mm.
I think that ties a little bit into hiring and retaining associate doctors. A lot of times it's not really about squeezing every last drop from your associates, because that speaks to the culture of the company and speaks to how you treat people. And sometimes doctors, no matter how nuanced, they feel that. And so I
Mm.
think one of the secret sauce, I don't know if secret, is that you got to really treat doctors with respect. And I mean really treat them with respect and not treat them like a factory line worker, which we none of us do that. But what happens is our actions consistent with what we say. A lot of times, a lot of people say, "Oh yeah, we're doctor first," and then when you talk to the doctors, like they don't feel like they're really doctor first, and so then so that would be something that we have to bridge the gap into what you say and what you mean. Is it really actually in action? And so those are some of the things that we make mistakes on early on, right? We really try to push doctors hard as we're growing. We're very aggressive, and I think we learn from that. And over time, we learn to a very pull or guiding relationship with doctors, and we don't push the doctors. And so we have very very high associate retention, even without equity. So I think our industry average is probably 89% in doctor retention. And single digits doctors have actual equity in the company. So all these are purely based on relationship and not based on, oh, you have equity, so you're stuck here, you can't leave, or things like that, or they sticking around because they want to wait for the next payout. And so it's not like that. It's really about, purpose in action. So a lot of people ask, every other every other seminar that I went to, they always talk about, oh, you gotta have a good culture, and good culture is great. And people are like, I'm sick of hearing good culture, good culture. What does that mean? So for me, it's not about having good culture. It's about really having actionable purpose. So what
Mm.
that means that you have a purpose. So we have a purpose, being people first. So being people first, it's not something you just say. It's something you have to do. If you say it all the time, it doesn't make it true. So you have to actually do things to make it true. And so I think what we do spend a lot of time on is how do we really define what are the actionable things underneath your value or your purpose statement, and how do you make it happen consistently day to day. And it's kind of like what you said earlier, Groundhog Day, right? Is we just repeating the same thing over and over, and eventually that becomes the culture.
Yeah. Okay, I want to untangle a few things because you just dropped a bunch of
Sorry.
amazing, no, you just dropped amazing gold there. So, um, let's start with taking care of doctors. I think that's a real interesting one because it sounds kind of easy or obvious on the surface. I've always liked the title DSO because if
Mm.
you break it down, it's Dental Support Organization. And I think an organization that's supporting the clinicians is what you're talking about here. What's always weird for us, I think, as you scale, is that the patient moves from being your primary customer to the doctor being your primary customer. And the patient kind of becomes the customer of your customer, right?
Yep.
And I think where a lot of clinician owners get stuck and they're just uncertain on what to do is what does it mean to support a clinician? And I think our human nature is to work at the extremes of things. So on one extreme is, well, it just means to give them full autonomy and you never talk to them again. You just go out to dinner, but you never talk about clinical things with them. Of course, the other extreme is, you're over their shoulder looking and go, no, do this, more, right? So they kind of feel like it's at one of those. And I think when you're trying to get to the middle and say, well, what would it mean to mentor a clinician? What would it mean to develop them? Can you kind of break that down, operationalize that for us? Because, I have
Yeah,
all the time, like I want to hire an associate or hire, but I don't know what it means to actually train them and what data should I use? How should I use it so that it doesn't become something that I'm stepping on their ego?
yeah. It's a very nuanced question because there's not all doctors are the same, right? So therefore, we have to really treat each associate differently. So the biggest thing that we do really well is retention. I know the title is hiring associates, but I have never had any issues hiring associates because you put an ad out or you hire a hiring agency, recruiting agent, you're gonna find some doctors interview for what for the job. So the key for me is that retention is really what it's all about. And
That's almost your KPI as the chief dental officer and owner is how good's my retention, right?
yes, because if I now I don't mind having turnover. Like if a doctor doesn't being a people first, we're very patient. So we give people probably a little longer than they should have to prove themselves to be worthy of the position. And so at some point we're gonna have to cut the cord and do a separation. But until then, we support them till the end. So when I do a lot of on-site visits, like I was mentioning earlier, and when I go mentor doctors, always think that I'm there to mentor the doctors. So it's very typical. I go visit office, they know I'm coming. The whole office is nervous. Oh, owner's coming, doctor's nervous. Oh my God, what am I doing wrong? Why is he coming? Right? It's always a very negative before they go to positive. And then I go there and I spend a lot of time. I used to spend about 2 days every time I go. And people always so surprised that I don't actually mentor as much the doctor and more about mentoring the people around the doctor and how to support that doctor. So
Mm.
when I'm mentoring the doctor, I'm actually mentoring the doctor to see what the practice is not doing right. And what I'm doing there is training the team and mentoring the team to show them what it's supposed to be doing and how they're supposed to support that doctor to the next level.
Can you give us
And
an example? Because it would be really helpful. Like, can you talk about a practice you went into
yeah,
recently or in the last couple months here and kind of an opportunity you saw that really changed things?
yeah. So for example, like I was just in an office week and a half ago. I'm on spring break right now, and actually it's in Nashville. And there's two doctors there, and they both have been there for several years, and they just don't produce what the office can offer, right? It's the office should be doing twice as much as they're producing. So that's why you go and visit and see what's wrong, right? The doctors, good doctors, and they're very good clinicians. The team is average. So when I go in there and talk to these doctors, I'm actually making them hold the team accountable to what the things they're doing. There's only three things that every dental office do: schedule, produce, and collect. So what I always do is I go in there and I focus on schedule. Now we do, as a DSO, we do have scheduling guidelines for each practice and all that stuff. But one of the reasons they don't do well is because they don't follow the scheduling guidelines.
Mm.
So, but that's not really a mentoring doctor issue now. That is a scheduling issue with the front desk. That's walking out with no two appointments and things like that. So when I'm going in there, the first thing I always need to make sure is, am I blaming the doctor? Always? Is the doctor's always at fault? And the answer is no. It's not. It's hardly ever the doctor's fault. It's probably only 30% of the time is the doctor's fault. So then it is my job to make sure to give everybody a chance. I need to make sure that the team around them are solid. So if you ask me, 80% of my success when on-site visits is not mentoring the doctor. It's actually mentoring the front desk, mentoring the assistants, mentoring the hygienists on how they should treat the doctor. And when I'm training the doctors per se, it's not about training the doctor. I'm just helping the doctors see what they're not seeing. Are you not seeing that this person is not doing what they're supposed to do? Are you not seeing that they're not doing a 2-on-1 transfer? Do you say something in morning huddle when there's some holes in the schedule? Do you know what to do when there's issues in the office? A lot of times it's about leadership for the doctor,
So
and that's what we focus on.
you're mentoring them on the support that they should be
Deserve.
requiring. And
Correct.
so, I often say to be an entrepreneur, you have to be willing to tolerate a lot of things. To be a successful entrepreneur, you have to know what to not tolerate anymore.
Mhm.
Basically teaching them like, hey, you can't tolerate that these x-rays are bad every time. You can't tolerate that your schedule is all wonky. Um, Otherwise, you won't be able to produce. You'll go home more exhausted, all of those things. Is that right in what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
So what happens is this is a spectrum of support, right? So once we make sure the offices are doing well around these associates, then now there's no more places for the associates to hide. So
Mhm.
over time, when you build a relationship with trust with a doctor, knowing that they're here to help me become a leader, help me become a better doctor with a better team, then everything else after that, now we have a good bond. And so everything after that makes it easy. If you need to implement something, for example, you want to implement something new, a clinical initiative, then you're going to get the doctor's buy-in because doctors know that now we're on the same side. So I'm inspiring alignment, I'm inspiring trust. And so a lot of times we don't push things out because that's what happens. You push things out before the doctors are ready, and that's why they quit. They feel like you too much pressure on them to produce or too much focus on production and all these things. So a lot of times it's really about the nuance, the art of how do you build trust relationship by first building a good team around them, then you build the trust with the doctor, and then it becomes a partnership where there's a give and take. If they want something, we ask for something in return. So that's how we build a partnership going forward.
So I love this because if they have all the support, you're killing two birds with one stone. One is you're getting the doctor the right support, so you know that they are getting what they need. And number two, they're seeing that you care about them directly or indirectly. And so when you get to step two, having done all that, if there are clinical capabilities things, they know that your heart's in the right place and you're just trying to elevate them. It's almost
Correct.
an extension of support now, not a
Yeah.
component of criticism. It's like, hey,
Yeah.
I want your career to be better. I've done all this work with the team. Now I need to get you the clinical capability to be able to excel as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that work upfront is what is the key to retention. A lot of people tend to skip all that and just go right to, hey, you gotta produce more, you gotta prep the crown 2 minutes faster, you gotta learn how to do surgical extractions. And it's okay if that's the company, the philosophy, you need that super GP model, whatever. But I think for us, we have a different philosophy. We don't have a super GP model. So we are not pushing for super clinical skills in the doctors. But what we are pushing for is good leadership skills in those doctors.
How do you think of your org chart? If I just zoom out for a second here, you're going around doing some of this clinical leadership. You said 40 plus locations all around the country.
Mhm.
Can you just walk us through that? I think it'd be helpful for some people. They might not be at that level yet, but just thinking through what scale looks like. What's your tiers that you kind of move down through the org chart, and how does leadership work? Because obviously you can't be in 40 locations, every month.
Yeah. I mean, so you talk about generally how to build a support platform. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
And then kind of who drives leadership generally from the office level, up and
yeah.
down.
So so I have so as a doctor, if I want to become a DSO and a leader, the first thing I did was to figure out what I'm not good at and finding people to support the weaknesses that I have, right? That's part of the EOS book about visionary and being an integrator. So for me, I really came down to four areas. came down to I need somebody that knows numbers and metrics and data and all that. I need a genius in data. So it took me a few tries to find the right CFO, but I finally found the right CFO that could do the things that I expected him to do. And then I need somebody who's really good at building relationships. So that's why I brought my COO in, Keisha, and she's been with me for almost 2 decades. And so I trained her from the ground up back in the day. I took her with me. And so she can build relationship with everybody and anybody. And that's how we drive the relationship culture all the way down to office level. So she oversees several regional directors, and each regional directors oversee about 8 or 7 to 9 offices, let's say. And so then the relationship goes from there. And then the regionals have relationships with the office managers. We don't always have an office manager in every office, but we have, maybe one manager that will maybe oversee 2 or 3 offices. But then most of the time, we always have an office manager overseeing partially or wholly in one area. And so that's kind of the operational structure there, which is not unique. It's pretty standard. And
Sure.
then on the yeah, and then on support center side, then we have Amanda, who is my chief strategy officer. She's really the integrator for the company. So she's the one that drives uh, initiatives of implementation and drives accountability. And that's where we do all the negotiation, centralization, and all the things that we need to make the support platform fully supportive of all the practices. And so she's overseeing the entire support center. And then what I'm good at is I'm good at building relationships with doctors and growing the company. So then I'm in charge of business development and I'm in charge of clinical leadership in the company. And as we grow bigger, I would probably have positions in those, you know, to replace myself in some of these positions over time as we get bigger. But I'm really good at it and I enjoy doing it. So, though that'll be something
And
I have to figure
I
out later.
often say the
Yeah.
chief dental officer is way more important of a position than the CEO, because the
Yeah.
chief dental officer in a DSO environment establishes what the clinical standard of care is going to be. And really the CEO, if we're being strict on positions here, is really supporting the dental support organization that's following through on the CEO's vision, so it's really
Yeah.
a support position. Can I ask a real tactical question just because I think this would be helpful? The scheduling piece is so critical, and I think people don't realize how important that is, because the one thing as an entrepreneur you can't create more is time, right?
Mm.
So how you're using that time at the practice level, of course, there's lots
Oh,
of
yeah.
on how to use it personally,
Yeah.
but how to use it at the practice level most effectively, I think so many
So
times as we coach members, we see, them having way too many exams for the doctors, or, they have this treatment right after this treatment. And I mean, it's just so difficult for the doctors to get in flow, you know.
So are you talking about schedule as in the office schedule, or are you talking about?
Office schedule,
Oh, okay.
yeah, office
So
schedule.
so office schedule, we have an extensive. Okay, we went through an extensive analysis of schedule before we came out with scheduling guideline. So first of all, you have to have somebody that can pull those data, right, and analyze the data, number of days, number of patient availabilities, per day, based on number of providers in each practice, and then we come up with what is possible, right? And then we come with the scheduling guidelines for hygiene and with the scheduling guidelines for doctors and by column, right? We do the rock, sand, water, or rock, sand, mud scheduling guideline. I don't know if you guys heard of that. It's pretty common. I wouldn't say, like I said, we don't do anything unique. The biggest thing is not about knowing what the concepts are, it's knowing how to hold accountability. And so
Yeah. Really
90% what we
execute
do,
on the concepts. Yeah.
yeah, everybody knows that we should do this and do this and do that. You know why nobody does it? Because nobody verify. So what we do is our unspoken core value in the company is trust and verify. That's what we do. And so everything we do, we trust, but we always verify with metrics, and that's how we track everything. And so we come up with a report on scheduling and the scheduling guidelines. So basically, for example, like hygiene exam for new patients should be 45 to 50 minutes, right? So
Mm.
some offices schedule an hour and 10, right? And so that's something that we need to work on over time with reporting and with, conversation with hygienists and doctor and things like that. So sticking to
Can
scheduling
you give
guidelines.
us, I mean, this
Yeah.
would just be fun for our listeners and
Yeah.
our DO members here who are listening
Mm.
in. Can you give us, I don't know, 5 components of your scheduling guidelines that is helpful?
Um, I mean, I think the structure is that so we do the rock, sand, and mud, right? So that's the first scheduling guideline and the structure. And then we have specific timeline for each procedure. So rock would be, wood canal and crown, build up and crown would be like an hour and a half, I guess, something like that. Uh, everything, then sand would be everything that's less productive, right? So it'd be like 5 fillings or less. And then, seats and denture and everything else in the third. So what we do is that we do an informal fourth column called teamwork column for conversions. So that's what we also do. And so we train on that because on average, our study shows that offices that convert on average, they produce about 30% more than what's on the schedule. So while we have a scheduling guidelines, our goal for each office is to have them convert same day 30% of what is scheduled. So then what happens in morning huddle is that they need to look for opportunities on the schedule that you can convert 30%. Now,
What are common things that they could convert that they come up with?
so there's really two types, hygiene patients converting to doctor side to do work, that's pretty common. So the other thing with a hygiene schedule is convert doctor patients to hygiene when there's openings because a lot of people don't actually go the other way, but a lot of times hygienists are sitting there getting paid and they're not doing anything for an hour. So a lot of times we always make the hygiene to go over there. And then the third one, the most common one, is just do more on the patient that's already scheduled. And that is what the chaos always set in. And that takes some time to train the offices to get used to a, un, calling an audible on the schedule and try to make changes to the schedule because everybody hates the schedule change during the day. And so we have to have organized chaos in the office. And that's what we really focus on training on the scheduling guideline. The scheduling guideline is only phase one because if everybody just do what they're scheduled, that's really easy. But what's hard is doing more than what's on the schedule. And so that's really the skill set that we focus on.
Who leads through that? Who kind of owns that metric of, hey, we're going to try to hit 30% more than what's scheduled? Is that an office manager? Is that the doctor?
That is the regional office, the regionals and the office manager. And that's where we hold them accountable to really sticking to the scheduling guidelines. And then the morning huddle is where the opportunities always present themselves. And so the biggest problem with most offices is that it's not that they don't have opportunities on the schedule. It's not that they're too busy. It's that they just don't look for those diamonds in your own backyard and then you don't convert. So conversion is really key to. So to me, like I look at an office, I would look at an office that's scheduled and look at an office that's actual production. And I could tell how good the office is based on how much they convert every day and how open and flexible and positive the mindset is. If they're always scheduled to go and they always achieve exactly what is scheduled, to me, that's not a blessing. That's a curse. I was like, oh, that office is stubborn, they're rigid, they're not open to change. That's an office I need to visit. So
Okay.
that's exactly why I need to go in there and break all those rigidity and really make it all flexible and nimble and be open and flexible. And that's what I go in.
You think the reason they're hitting just a goal is because they're inflexible on like it's not that the patient doesn't need more care. They're just like, well, this is why I scheduled today. And you're trying to pull that instead of having the patient come in 3 times, why wouldn't we just get as much done today as we could?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. It's actually very easy. I usually make very little changes to show them what's possible. So for example, in this office in Nashville, I just told them to do one thing. And the one thing I said was, now I was there for the first day, observe everything. I see what the problems are, and there's a lot of issues, but you have to prioritize what you focus on. You don't go in there, oh, there's 15 things I saw wrong, fix it. I'll come back next month. And no, you just pick 1 or 2 things and you want to celebrate small wins and little successes. So I told them, okay, I want you to just one thing. I want you to shrink every schedule by 10 minutes tomorrow. That's it. And I said, that's it. I just want you to shrink every doctor's appointment by 10 minutes. I'm not asking for anything. I said, all you do is shrink everything by 10 minutes. And then guess what happened? They probably didn't even notice every schedule was shrunk by 10 minutes because they were just so focused on giving every patient more than enough time, right? So then you realize that really the time expand to what, you have an hour to prep a crown, you're going to use an hour. You have 5 minutes, you're going to use 5 minutes. So when you only shrink 10 minutes per appointment, they don't even feel the pain. But then you know what that does? That changes the mindset right away. Everybody's like, oh my God, we can do everything and on time and run on time. And we're producing more because everything shrunk by 10 minutes. And guess what? You're able to do more and shrunk more and convert more. So
Yeah.
now I open the door to flexibility and possibility. So then it's easy now because I build trust, I build relationship without causing life changing things in the office. It's easy to ask for the next thing to change. And so that's how I do it step by step, just these little tweaks. But those little tricks is what is you need to do it day in and day out. And that's what makes the biggest difference. Like you say, Groundhog Day, right? Everything just got to be consistently doing over and over and over.
I'm going to call it the Samson Liu tweaks. All right. These Samson Liu tweaks. So one of them is shrink the schedule by 10 minutes, every appointment by 10 minutes.
Yeah, just to see if they can do it, right? I always challenge them. They all say, "Oh my," they just all surprised, but they're always excited about the challenge. And you know, once you shrink 10 minutes, you know what they can do? They'll find more places to shrink because now they feel like, oh, I can do anything. I can.
Yeah.
This is actually funny.
What's a second tweak? What's a
The
second tweak?
second trick, the second trick is morning huddle.
Okay.
Most people learn morning huddle really well, but I have been to so many offices, including my own, and no matter how well we teach them, they never actually do it correctly.
What's
So,
correctly look like? Yeah, I want to hear it
well,
correct.
it depends on now there are different kinds of morning huddles, but what I've seen, and it could be different for all you guys, so I don't want to generalize, but most of the offices I've seen, they just go through the motions in the morning huddle. They don't actually find value in the morning huddle. They just go, oh, there's 15 things I need to do in morning huddle. So I get all these data, I do all these chart preps, and I just go through all the things. It's a very busy, but ultimately not very productive morning huddle is what most people do.
It's like an administrative coordination. It's like a bureaucracy. It's an
Yeah,
administrative coordination meeting. You're
yeah,
adding in this element of like this is a game we're about to play, which is how to
correct,
find 30% in this schedule
correct.
that we did not have when you came in this morning.
There has to be a purpose to morning huddle.
Yeah.
What if I have asked everybody what is the purpose of morning huddle? How would you answer that question? How would
Mm.
anybody answer it? If I ask all of you right now, what do you think your purpose for morning huddle really is? You can put it in the chat. I'm curious what you guys say, actually.
Yeah. I wonder how many it's number one. I don't know. We haven't been able to get people to do morning huddle. Number two, my doctor's never showing up to morning huddle, so I don't know what to do about that, you know. Number three, well, we just review the schedule and, maybe share a little bit of a good thought or yeah.
So,
I-
so this actually, so this, okay, Justin did a good job. Align team, check in, identify bottlenecks, identify opportunities, right? That's probably what everybody else does, right? So now you're going through this, okay, we have an opening at 9, we have opening at 3, we have we have these opportunities to convert, we have these, we have 2 patients back to back here. That's kind of like
Ready, break. Yeah.
reading all this stuff, right? I almost fall asleep every time I go to morning huddle when they go through all this, because there's only one overriding reason why you do morning huddle is to figure out how do you add more production to the
Yeah.
day, but you have to identify what the barriers to identifying those opportunities. So, for example, I only care about how much time the doctor's time is for the day for each patient. The reason for that is if the goal for the purpose 100 is 30% conversion, right? So then if you tell me there's 5 openings here, that doesn't actually do anything. What I need to hear is I have Mrs. Smith coming in here. She has 2 crowns on the schedule that needs to be done that we can convert today. But that's where the extent of the morning huddle usually stops. What I need to do is the next level beyond that. Is Mrs. Smith ready to do those 2 crowns today? And if not, why not? and what can we do today to convince her to get those 2 crowns also started today, in addition to what she's had on the schedule. That's the only thing that matters in morning huddle. I don't need to know that there's 6 openings. I do not need to know their bottlenecks. I just need to know, is Mrs. Smith gonna do what is unscheduled today? And if not, why not? And what can we do to help her to say yes today?
What are
That's
common
the
reasons? What are common reasons? I mean, she's on the schedule. I would assume she's doing the work. What would be common reason she's not going to do it?
it's either time, money, or it's mostly time, money, and insurance, right? And fear. Sometimes it's fear. But most of the time I want to know, like, this is what I expect to hear from every business assistant about Mrs. Smith. Mrs. Smith is ready to do 2 crowns today. She can afford them all today. So I offered to a payment plan over the next 6 months. So she's ready to get started today. That would be ideal conversation. Then we know we're going to convert. We know we got the 30% coming. But what I usually hear is Mrs. Smith has 2 crowns that need to be done today. There's nothing beyond that. So I need more information. That means I need them to actually reach out to the patients and really get to the bottom of what's going on behind what's on the schedule. That's what I want to know. I can read the schedule. Everybody can read the schedule. Everybody can see the openings on the schedule. I don't need to regurgitate all the things that we know. I only want to know the things that I can't see on the schedule. So I need to know that Mrs. Smith is really, really can't afford the 2 crowns. Maybe when you talk to the patient today, I think she's open to it, but she needs doctor to talk to her one more time to really reassure they're needed and necessary, and that we can get started today. So that's the information I want to hear. I don't want to hear anything before that, because that's pointless. I can see that Mrs. Jones has 5 fillings to be done. Okay, is he going to do it today? And if not, why not? Tell me why. That's what I wanted to do. So what happens is, when you do a good morning huddle, that trains the team to be a better listener and communicator with the patients. So now when they're talking to patients, they are thinking that they're not going to say to Mrs. Smith, like, oh, confirm your appointment for tomorrow. It's like, hey, I saw you have 2 crowns. Is there any reason why you can't do it or not? And just get more than that. That's
Oh, I
where the
love
real
that.
training comes from.
So, okay, this is another Samson Liu tweak
Yeah.
trick there, which is the confirmation calls.
Yes. That's where the
Have
real thing is
treatment.
training them how to talk to patients and get deeper understanding to get
It
to the next
has it.
level.
It has the treatment in the call, right? And asking the question, is there any reason why you won't be getting those done? So that,
Yeah.
because I was wondering how, now you said you're business assistant. Is there a title actually in the practice called business assistant, or how do you think about, like, who's prepping this for, because somebody's got to be kind of the leader of the huddle.
It's the business assistants are the ones that prep for all the patients, and hygienists sometimes prep for their own hygiene patients to convert for hygiene purposes.
Is business assistant, is that a front desk
Yeah, that's our front desk. That's official title for front
I
desk.
love
Yeah.
it. No, I love it. Yeah. Business assistant. Again, it's kind of focused on a result over just an activity.
But you
Um,
have to, but what I've noticed, like, it's really hard to train the team without showing them at the morning huddle. So I can train all the team, like, oh, you need to prep the chart, you need to find what's going on. But nobody does this because they don't connect the prepping, the call with the morning huddle. And so I have to show them with the end in mind. So I always start the morning huddle and then work on that. And so then as they work backwards, then they will work towards that morning huddle the way that it needs to be.
because it's this result. You're driving towards this result, and the morning
Yeah,
huddle is now a support system to the result. The confirmation call is a support system to that result, right?
correct. Yes.
All of these things are feeding. So I think one thing
Yes.
you're laying out is the only way to be a leader is you have to have a clear metric that you're driving towards. It can't just be a foofy culture. We all want to get along. Good luck. Hope you do
Yeah.
well, kind of thing.
Once you get a conversion culture, then the office is there. They used to conversion, used to pivot, they used to be flexible and think, and then all of a sudden the production jumps up. So for example, that office did the next day they did $38,000. And because they're looking for conversion, they were really serious about what to do. And they
Two,
doubled.
two, two doctors.
Yeah, double, 38,000.
Double is 38,000. So you were already doing
They're doing about 15 to 19 on average, but then,
a day?
yeah.
Wow. That's like cash collectible, or that's like UCR pretend money?
No, that's real money. It's all cash, so it's all fee for service.
Oh, it's
So
off fee for service.
so the fees are much higher too. So it's not that hard to treat those things.
Tell me how you think about conversion. And one of the things we were talking about in our coach training meeting today here at DEO was this number of, if you have a team that's converting 50% of what gets treatment planned, then you have to basically be treatment planning twice as much as what your goal is for the day, right? So how do you back into that same concept? If you say, hey, my conversion rate is X, then that means I got a treatment plan Y in order to hit the daily goals.
Um, I don't know if you actually do it that way because you're
Tell me how you do it. Yeah.
well, no, we kind of meet the doctors where they're at because so for example, like every time doesn't matter the same office, right? If you change the doctor, it's a different office. So doctors are very different one from the other. So you almost have to meet each doctor where they're at, build a trusting relationship, and then work it up from there. But what happens is when doctors can all what I find is that most doctors, even the worst dentists that I met, can always do more than what they were doing. So the key right away is unlock that. And that's why we went over all the things that we did earlier, because you got to make sure that that doctor is all already living up to his or her full potential, whoever, wherever they are at that point. And then after that, then over time, we can introduce things to make them even more efficient. So to me, the biggest concept from a clinical perspective, if we're putting a business head down, put a clinical head on, if we're truly doctor mentoring, the next step is actually not clinical mentoring, is managing multiple operatories. The number one struggle for most associates to do more is they don't know how to manage more than one patient at one time. So the worst associate, the one that work well one chair, and they work one patient at a time, right? And so even if they have two operatories, they very rarely use all two operatories. They might just work out of one and they overflow in the second one. So because they don't know how to manage more than one patient at one time. So to me, it's not about actually scared. It's treatment planning is not the biggest issue. It's mostly case acceptance. That's the biggest issue with most doctors. If you look at most analysis of doctors' scheduled treatment plan versus case acceptance, most doctors' case acceptance is about 30 to 40%, and that'll be pretty high. So then it's not, and that's the worst doctors. So a lot of times it's not about treatment planning. It's really focused on case acceptance. That's really about talking to the patients, getting to yes, right? So those are the things I actually work on first with the doctors, actually working on doctor like verbiage. And the second thing I work with the doctor is multi-chair efficiency. And those are the two things I work. But you notice that all those things do not actually involve clinical procedural training or mentoring. It's all around communications and time management. And those are the next things that really raise the doctor to the next level. Not necessarily prepping a crown faster by 2 minutes. It doesn't matter if you prep the crown an hour, 2 minutes, if you only see one patient an hour. It really doesn't matter. So
Right, right. I think we're getting to the same answer. I like your approach and how you articulate it much better.
mm,
And so you're saying, hey, but the way I like to approach this is just say, they're going to treatment plan what they're going to treatment plan. I'm not even going to focus on that. Whatever they're treatment planning, I'm going to work on the case acceptance piece. And then from a modality perspective, it's actually about the multi-chair movement that I'm
mm,
most concerned about. Is
yeah.
there is there give me one or two tricks on the case acceptance that you're like, this is what everyone's doing wrong. If they just do these one or two things, they're not even that good. They just need to just do those and it'll just move it up just a little bit, just doing that on the case acceptance.
So I give you two. Yeah. Okay. So the one trick that I would recommend for communication with the patient is use the PCSB method: problem, consequence of no treatment, solution, and benefits. I think some of you have heard that here and there, and it's been around, talked about, but we really embrace that and we teach that. So most doctors just jump from problem to solutions. They never go to the consequences. Oh, you got a broken tooth, Mrs. Smith. You need a crown,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that's 99% of most doctors. They will never admit to it, but every time I hear them talk, it's always the same. They go right to the solution without talking about the consequences. So the trick is,
We kind of assume, I mean, this is human nature, but when
yeah,
we're really smart at something, we actually assume people understand consequences when they don't,
they
right?
don't. So actually what I do is a 5-minute conversation, like 30 seconds on the problem, 4 minutes on consequences, and 30 seconds on solutions and
Okay, wait,
benefits.
I like this breakdown. Say that again.
5-minute PCSB. So problem is 30 seconds, 4 minute on consequences of no treatment, and 30 seconds on solutions and benefits.
I love it. So like it's just heavily talking about the consequence. It's not just you need to include the consequence. The consequence needs to be the
Yeah.
full part, 80% of the
Yeah.
5 minutes.
The reality is not actually 5 minutes, but I want people to understand that
Sure.
you need to just verbalize the problem and really talk about the consequences. So there's
Powerful.
actually, so the consequences, it needs to be not just clinical, it needs to be life and social consequences. If you
Mm,
don't, like if it's hurting, you could miss work. That's a consequence. It's not, it's hurting, there's an infection spreading to the root and the periapical, you're going to get a abscess. Those are great clinical consequences, but you have to talk about life consequences, like you're going to miss work, or you're in pain, on a Friday, there's no dental office open, and you have, like you have a wedding coming up, you really want to get this fixed, you don't give us enough time to take care of the treatment, you might not be able to get to the wedding with beautiful nice teeth, just those are consequences that are not related to clinical.
yeah.
And yeah, and so what happens is once you get through all that, guess what? The patience is the one that comes up. Oh my God, what do we do? What can we do? Oh, well, we can do a crown, and fix it, and it will look and feel just like your natural teeth. I
Mm.
just finished my solution benefits. 30 seconds.
Do you
I don't
like
even,
to
I
you
don't
like
even
to
describe what they are. I don't describe what they are. The assistant can do that when I leave the room.
got it. Do you like to do the consequence kind of almost like a friend? Like, here's why I'm concerned about this, because this is gonna happen, this is gonna happen, this is gonna
Yeah.
happen. But it's almost like you are just you're just empathetic towards the
Yeah.
realities of where their life is headed, you know?
It is when if you talk all clinical, then you sound like you're talking down on them. But if you talk about life consequences, now you're a friend, you're really looking at them holistically, right? That's really what you need to bond with other people, is that you need to make sure they understand here that, hey, you're not just here for your teeth. I'm here because I'm worried about your kids, I'm worried about your time off work, and things like that. And we're
You
open
like to roll
Fridays.
the chair so you're really facing them and just talking to them as a friend.
Yeah.
Is that kind of how you like
Yeah,
to? Yeah.
it's really informal. It's really casual, and
Yeah.
it's a lot less pressure because we have well-meaning intentions, and patients need to know the consequences before they can make a decision. And that's why, like, if you don't get the consequences, they always feel like something is missing.
Mm.
So you have to really focus on what that is, and then talk about the treatment. Now I'm because of time, I'm oversimplifying this because there are some different options for treatment. And the next biggest mistake I see is presenting too many options instead of giving patients, your recommendation of what the best treatment is. And that's really the next thing that we have to work with doctors on. After the PCSB is the treatment prioritization and recommendation.
One of the most powerful stories I heard on this is a friend of mine, his mother-in-law had breast cancer and she went to a doctor and the doctor said, well, there's three things we could do. And she said, well, which one do you recommend? He said, all three have their consequences, da da da. Da. And she said, let me go get a second opinion. She went to
That's
the
too
next
much.
doctor and
Yeah.
the doctor said, I know exactly what's wrong. I've done thousands of these procedures. I can do it on Thursday. There's one solution that I think is fabulous. When can you do it Thursday at 3? And she said, yes, that would be great. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
people, we think that they want options. They actually just want leadership.
Yeah. Yeah. So the biggest thing to do is just present one treatment. When it's time to talk about actual treatment, you would talk about two things. Talk about the treatment and why you recommend it, and you talk about the treatment that you don't recommend, and why you don't recommend it. So most people only stop at the first half. They only present, oh, you need a crown because the crown is the greatest and the best things in sliced bread. And they stop there. And that's when patients feel like, well, what if there's another option? And I didn't hear anything. So they always ask, well, can you do a filling? Right? Because they always want to know what another treatment option is. And then you go, well, the filling doesn't work out, it's too big, all this stuff, right? So you're doing it
Now you're
anyways.
back on your heels, responding rather than leading.
You're being, instead of being reactive, and it's like the calling you out, you're being proactive and you're an expert. You're being reactive, you're a shyster. You're being proactive, you're an expert. So you just say it now and just stop all that. I don't recommend a filling. I recommend a crown, and just say it. And then the patient will feel like, I have all the information. I know what is good, what is not. I know the options. I know why I don't want to do it. I know why this is good. They usually say yes because they feel like they have no need to call. So the number one failure, not failure, but kind of like a mistake that I notice is like, whenever a patient says to a doctor, I need to talk to my wife, I need to go and think about it, I tell them this is where you can work on your conversation with the patient. That's where, like, that's basically saying that you are not able to explain clearly to me that I can make a decision today. And so you have to really go back and think about your conversation, like, which part did I miss? Did I do PCSB? Did I recommend the treatment? Did I over-recommend it? Did I give too many options? And that's where you have to debrief. And that's what I do. Most of the time, I just stand in the outside of the room and they just listen and they give the doctor feedback. And that's all I do. I do all day. And then after 4 or 5 times, the doctors gets it. And then all of a sudden, patients start saying yes.
Well,
That's really it.
you've operationalized this so
Yeah.
beautifully. It's not like, hey, doctor, you have to be more dynamic and more extrovert and more friendly. And,
Yeah.
it's a very clear process that still fits within the clinical model that they understand. Okay, I know we're running up on time, but this is just so much gold. Talk to me just quickly about the multi-chair. Where are we missing on that? Where are we missing on?
The multi-chair, most doctors don't know how to run multi-chair efficiently because they don't know how to get in and out of the operatory efficiently. So the first thing I tell them is that depends on the skills level. I will give them either a 15-minute rule, 10-minute rule, or 7-minute rule. That means that, if you're new and you're
Seven minutes the best, huh? 7 minutes
7 minutes
is
the best. So that means that no matter what, every 7 minutes, you need to get off your butt and leave the room and do something else and come back later. And that's the most efficient doctor. But
okay.
most doctors do not get there right away. So I always start with a 15-minute rule. Most doctors say, oh, I can do that. I can do that. And then they go, okay, well, let's try 10 minutes. So that's when they have struggles with 10 minutes. Because when I say 10 minutes, I mean, that's a rule. That means you're prepping a crown. You better finish prepping that crown by 10 minutes and get up. You don't need to finish the whole procedure, but whatever you're doing, you got to finish that. So without training the doctor to be better clinically, I'm just giving them benchmarks that they can meet on their own.
Oh, wow. So
They
now
also they will prep a
you're just
film a little
trying to hit,
faster. Yeah.
yeah,
I don't
you're
care if I don't care if they prep 10 minutes for a filling. As long as they get up every 10 minutes, it's fine. You
right,
know.
right. So they're going to naturally drive themselves to be better
That's
because,
exactly it.
yeah, all you're doing is showing them the right behavior that needs to happen on the operatory level. And then you're
Correct.
going to, just like you did on the schedule where you just took 10 minutes off,
Yeah.
they're going to figure out, well, if
Correct.
how do I do it? Oh my
You have
goodness.
to you have to have them self-discover. You cannot push them. You can only guide them.
Yeah.
Remember, so that's what being people first is about. Everything I do is live up to the people first philosophy. You got to
Yeah.
treat people with respect and let them figure things out for their own. I'm just giving them benchmarks they can meet on their own. Now, if after all these things don't work, that's when you know that maybe this doctor is not a good fit,
Right, right,
right?
right. Yeah. How long can they be out of that operatory? I mean, how many other operatories are they doing the 10-minute, 10-minute, 10-minute?
It doesn't matter. I mean, three usually works up to 3 to 4 if you work that many operatories, but most doctors are 2. So if you're down to 7 minutes, you can do 3 chairs easily. and not
But
just
the
three chairs
patient's
that.
waiting for 15 minutes or so in between or something like
Well,
that.
but that's the key. So the key is the key. The next question I always ask, okay, I can do this in 7 minutes now. So, but what? How do I get in and out of the office? I say, well, it's really simple. I said, always do it in the name of the patient. Whatever you do is always in the name of the patient. So after 7 minutes, you're halfway through one comp prep out of three. Just say, hey, you know what, Mrs. Smith, I butcher your teeth, and now I'm gonna give you a little break. Okay, just relax, get you a little rinse, get a little break, and then I'll come right back. That's 7 minutes right there. It's very simple. Oh, I just gave you an aesthetic. You're not numb enough. I'm gonna give you a little bit more to make sure you're really numb. Okay, I'll come back in 7 minutes. It's there's so many little things you can say for the benefit of the patient. Oh, his jaw must be tired. How about I give you a few minutes to rest? And that's how you gracefully exit yourself. And so as long as you give the doctors a few ideas of what to say, they'll run with it. They'll figure out all kinds of things. Oh, like, oh, it's bleeding. The gum's bleeding. I'm gonna put some gauze in there. How about let bite on it for a few minutes? There's so many little things they could say to gracefully exit yourself without seeming like you're abandoning the patient. Oh my gosh, he's so nice to give me time to rest. You can like all these things are gonna add more value to customer service.
Oh, brilliant. Now, you're not focused on, I know you're not focusing on production, which I think is also brilliant, but you have to know with having so much data, if a doctor's producing at X, Y, and Z. So kind of like these 15, 10, and 7
Yeah.
are kind of production bands where you kind of know, yeah, that doctor, I'm not going to go in there and be able to make him any more efficient. I mean, where are kind of the numbers or versus the opposite where you're like, there's absolutely an opportunity to help them get to the next.
So that goes to the big picture of the office. If the office is doing really well, then it doesn't really matter where the doctor's level is. Like for example, our goal is the office has to be minimally 17% profitable, right? And so then if they consistently hit that, then it's not a bad to good situation, it's a good to great situation. And that's a much easier conversation with the team, with the office and all that. If they're below 70%, I've done everything I can, the regionals have done everything they can. So now you know that maybe that's not a doctor long term for us. So that's where we
You're
dictate
looking at
based
the
on that.
holistic picture,
Mhm.
not even necessarily top line, but how's the practice getting managed, staff costs, all of those things
Yeah.
associated.
Like an office, like for example, the office I mentioned in Nashville, right? They're 22% profitable. So when I go in there, I'm not going there and guns blazing, right? I'm going there, it's tweaking little things. And so,
Yeah.
it's not a lot, but it's the little things that they need to work on.
Is there a dollar KPI though? I mean, like I know that if rent's $6,000 to make that 6%, I've got to be 100,000 in production to make some of the numbers work. There's just some key KPIs. Is there a certain amount of production where you're like, hey, if we're producing below this, or doc's got to be at least at this number for these things to play
Well, I
out?
mean, I think the industry standard is like, a new grad, maybe 60,000 a month is the minimum. So 80,000 is, above average, and then 100,000 is really what you're looking for in doctors. So anything more than that would be pretty much a keeper, right? So that's the goal, is to get all the doctors up to 80 to 100,000. That's the goal. But then they'll
Except
get
for
better
your
from then
except
on.
for your Nashville where you're doing 19,000 a day per doctor or something like that,
Yeah.
right?
Well, that's well, office hit or miss too. Like it's inconsistency that we focus on sometimes. It's not
Yeah.
really,
You have a big day and then you'll have a down
yeah.
day.
Most
Okay,
doctors are not consistent. That's really the issue.
before I let you go, and you've been just so kind, and this has just been pure gold. I really appreciate it. We didn't really hit on the hygiene side, and I'd love to
Mm.
just give them a little bit on the hygiene side. So,
Okay.
how do you think about that? Because that's probably, at this stage of the industry, it feels like the hygiene's scarier to have conversations with than the doctors anymore.
So so it's we have very high hygiene retention as well. So it's not about hiring trouble, it's about retention. So we always focus on retention and hygienists too. So our retention is really high. So I don't the one of the early mistakes was actually I think we keep underperforming hygienists too long and moving them out too slow. And that's actually one of the biggest mistakes we made. We actually are
Because we're so
focused on
scared, we can't hire anybody. We're scared we can't hire anybody else.
is I don't know if that is true because I never have an issue of hiring an hygienist. like I will always look for, I'm like, that's like doctor, every time I put an ad out for hygiene, I always get hygienists responding to an ad, right? So to
Right.
me, I think the number one thing, we pay our doctors and hygienists very fairly. Like we don't try to undercut them. We pay them really fair, right? Number one. And number two, that we do have a really good hygiene bonus system that makes them excited about it, right? And the hygiene system is not, like I said, is not earth shattering. It's just what they get paid, and then they get a bonus on top of that based on the percentage of collections they get above a certain amount, of a certain threshold. So it's just a
Okay, so a lot
bonus.
like Dr. Depeche Patel trained on
Yeah,
in a class is
yeah.
you're gonna treat them like a doctor. Are you using something similar to a doctor contract, like 35% collections or
Yeah,
something?
we use like 30% collections,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then and then after a certain threshold, that's they start getting that after a certain threshold. So
So
it's not a
it's a greater of their hourly rate or this 30% number,
so
something
the so we actually do it different. We do a guarantee base salary
like
plus a percentage bonus that's commission on collections.
on the okay,
So we don't do either or. We do salary plus a bonus.
right. But the bonus has to get to a place where
Certain threshold, yeah. So
it's
because of
above.
that, and because of that, it's just like Dr. Depeche, right? It's like then it doesn't really matter how much they're paid because the
Right.
threshold will be higher if they're being paid more.
Well,
So
on my cost of goods section, I'm going to end up with the same percentage. And the closer
yeah,
I can bring that percentage, that's what matters more than the
yeah,
hourly rate,
yeah,
right?
yeah. So to me, like that, we found that to be the best over the years of trial and error to be the best compensation model for all hygienists everywhere. So we're not changing that. We're sticking to that, and it is very high retention. So we know it's working, right?
Well, your best hygienists are making more per hour than anywhere else in the marketplace. But on
Yeah,
your E&L, it works so well because the
correct.
percentage is better than it could
Yeah,
be. Right.
correct. So to me, I think once you figure out a compensation formula for hygiene, I don't think you're gonna have any. I don't think you have too many issues with hygiene retention. I think
Mhm.
that's really once you figure out that
But do you
formula.
ever get to a point? I have seen where the hygienist like, but I don't want to work that hard. I get that I can make more money, but is there
But
some way
that's
to
but
pay me
that's
a
but
high hourly and not have to work that
well
hard?
that's where the mistakes we made because we had hygienists like that and we didn't let them go.
Mm.
And that's when it's time to let those hygienists go and interview new hygienists that would be open to this formula. And then once you keep them, they don't ever leave, or they rarely leave because of that.
Okay, let's make sure I understand the math. So let's say a hygienist, I mean, you're all over the place, so you probably see what everything from, are you in Washington State where they're playing or on the
Oh
East Coast?
yeah,
Or,
it's pretty high. Washington is probably the highest in the country.
yeah, I always say Washington State's like my canary in the coal mine of what's coming down the pipe. So what would you say is an 35 to 75, 45 to, I mean, where are you seeing
It's probably $55 an hour
50,
average.
55 on average? Okay. And then let's say somebody, and then let's say someone produces really well, you're going to look at that 30% and you're going to say, hey, I'm going to give you X amount above. Uh,
Yeah, so it depends on what they're paid, right? So we create a threshold, a daily threshold, how much they have to do. And so based on what your P&Ls want, right? For us, we want about 4 times, 3.5 to 4 times is what we want. It's not always possible, but
yeah, yeah.
that's the goal. So 3.5 to 4 times that'll be the threshold, and everything above that is 30%.
All right. So let's say we'll just use 55 an hour. I want to be able to do somewhere around, 200 bucks an hour, ideally,
Yeah. Yeah.
150 to $200 an hour. And whatever that threshold is, once they get above that, you're starting to give them
Yeah.
30%.
So let's say 1,700 bucks a day. So anything over that, they get 30%.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and that's
It comes
and
out
but that
mathematically the same
yeah,
as a greater of contract. I'll pay you
yeah,
the greater of
yeah.
30% or, yeah,
It's
yeah,
sometimes it's not the actual formula, it's the way you present it, right? To the way that they're excited about. But
yeah, that's good. Yeah,
yeah.
that's really good. Hey, Doc, I know I've kept you past the time. I really appreciate how generous and open you've been on this entire thing. Do you mind just maybe one more minute? I think we've
We have
asked.
a lot of questions and I feel bad not being able to answer like there's like 1,000. Justin has
I
like
know.
20 of
Well,
them.
I've been watching them. I got most of them here and there. I know. Well, everybody's just so thrilled. Maybe we'll speak to this one thing and then we'll let you go because I think I hit on a lot of them here.
Okay.
Just overall motivation for staff. I think people sometimes just feel discouraged. I think at times they think, I'm trying to do the right thing. I'm trying to get this organized. Where do you think maybe they're missing? I mean, I don't think you're holding back and saying, yeah, sometimes you just have the wrong people and you got to be faster at letting them go. If you're doing all these things to support them, if you've got this compensation structure in place and they still aren't performing, I mean, the last part is, yeah, they're just not the right fit, right?
Yeah. I mean, for staff overall, like we have a bonus system for the whole team. So I think that's what actually helps with this team culture. And we play a lot of games in the office. And I think those are the things that make a big difference. So, for example, we have a March Madness game going on right now in all the offices. Every year we have a big March Madness, and we pit every office against each other in like actually in a whole bracket. So all 40 offices are in a
They're the
March
bracket.
Madness bracket. Yeah. And so what happens is every week they get to win prizes, they get to, to get a certain production level, they get something. Every week they get crumble cookie this week, they may get like sneakers next week, or whatever, right? And the closer to the finals, the bigger the prizes are. And it's a very successful incentive game that we play every year. And so then that
They're
builds
not
a lot
really
of
competing
culture.
against each other. They're more competing against their own margins. Is that what they're doing?
Well, every week the goal is different. Like, hey, this week you have to, like, for example, you have to convert 30% would be a goal for the week, right? So then every officer convert 30% would be go in the next bracket. If they lose, then they don't. Like, so there'll be little things like that. And
Okay.
so we have a lot of these games go on. And then we have a bonus system called Gold Green Bonus, which is every quarterly bonus system.
Quarterly.
Every office has that. So I don't need
I
to
like that you
spouse
said
it.
that because I think sometimes people go too soon and then your ups and downs end up making the bonuses don't work. Do you like to do the bonus off of a net profit number, or is it something that you already know ties to net profit, but it's top line, or how do you think
It's
about
it's 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 a little bit of top line and a little bit of bottom line. So it's mostly top line, I will be honest. It's mostly
it?
top
But
line because it's hard to relate the complexity.
right, but you know what it's the impact on bottom line.
Yeah, yeah. So
You're just
office,
converting it to top line to make their life easier
yeah,
for.
basically, yeah. So and then the games we create several games through the year, and then we do those same games every year. So honestly, if you think about it, you just need to do this once or twice and really create a recurrent number of games, seasonal games every year. Then you can just rinse and repeat every year, and you know so that's how you create a
You've
culture.
gamified the P&L. You've
Yeah,
gamified the P&L. That's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
All right, we might have you on just to tell us about all the games at some point, but there was just so much here. I really appreciate it, Doc. You've been awesome. I think we hit on quite a bit of the questions. I might come back to you just occasionally. We'll bring some of the questions over into our WhatsApp groups too, that we have with DEO. But thank you so much for everybody listening. Again, if you want to kind of get in on the inside here at DEO, go over to DEO Dental Group and click on getting that growth accelerator call. And until next time, keep smiling.